New story out today shows that the U.S. Census Bureau, or the agency under the Secretary of Commerce, is debating whether or not to add a question to blacks of, are you a descendant of slaves? This is a precursor to reparations. And I am not a pessimist, but I want to be very clear that the pace that we're moving right now, you are going to live in a country where there is reparations. You're going to live in a country where white people are going to be forced to give money to black people for something you did not do, for something you are not connected to, just because you look like somebody who did something bad.
You hear this breakdown explanation of reparations from one Charlie Kirk. If you're a black, then a white will have to give his paycheck to a black, because that's the simplistic, stupid, and completely false explanation from someone who wants to, as ironically they point out, race bait this kind of a fight. Let's let him continue with his lies.
So I have some very simple questions for the reparation crowd. Do white people get money because our ancestors, 600,000 of them, died in the Civil War so that blacks could be free? Do we get reparations for that? Number two, what if a child is half black or half white, or a person is half white or half black? Do they pay reparations to themselves? What about new blacks into the country, Nigerians, Haitians, people from Western Africa that have immigrated in that last 20 or 30 years? They have to pay reparations to other blacks that claim to be oppressed because their ancestors were slaves? How does one prove that they're descendants of slaves? So let me get this straight. It is evil and racist to ask a black to go show ID when you vote, but somehow you're going to be able to have a black show all of the paperwork that they're the descendant of slaves?
Lots of questions there, Pascal. One of them being why a black has to show ID before they vote. I'm sorry, doesn't have to show ID when they vote, because obviously only black folks are caught up in this voter ID push, which I think is a little bit more of an exposure to their process and actually who they're targeting with these anti-voter laws that they like to push. It seems like that's a bit of a tell on them. And also, how are we going to prove if some new black shows up in the country and isn't really a descendant of a slave, as a white continues to have to give all of their money to these no good, lazy black folks? Does it get any more stark than this about how these folks talk? This used to be the kind of stuff that, we knew folks would say. And then after we pointed out, they go, oh, you guys, that's not what happens. And it's always behind closed doors. Apparently, it's opened right up, and you can say these things in the open and still apparently not be seen as a complete bigot.
Clearly, the white supremacist edible just started kicking in for Charlie Kirk there. I don't understand why he was. Listen, this guy needs to take several seats. He is clearly off his rocker. I'm just going to say that, okay? He's clearly having a stoner moment and asking some ludicrous, ridiculous questions that have no reason to be on his channel at all. But whatever.
How close could we possibly be to any kind of reparations, first of all? And yeah, many times make the organization of that, the way that it could be put together, that people are fearful of. I haven't seen it. I mean, you see headlines that talk about here and there, some people in support of something. Even we saw something with, I think, San Francisco, or at least in the state, how all that is being talked about. But it's never anything that's close to any kind of policy. So what is the point here? Anytime these types of conversations are had, when he's blatantly being trying to divide the country more and more on this, the whole point is to continue to keep this standard division between one group and another, so his followers can think, oh yeah, I almost forgot. We almost got baited into thinking that only trans folks are our enemies. We have to go back to the normal standard enemies of black folks. Oh my God, we almost forgot about that southern border and the wall that former President Trump was trying to build, and us demonizing and talking about how every person who comes from southern countries are drug dealers, are hauling sacks of cocaine on their legs, as one Steve King said before. All these same things they have to come back to. Anytime you let off of one group that you're looking to continue to hate, you have to shift it every once in a while to keep the hate rotation in play, because sometimes MAGA might get bored with the same hated person. So whoever's going to be next on the list, I mean, women, black folks, Latinos. They kind of went after Asians pretty hard during COVID, but it's whoever that they need to keep the rotation going. And oddly, as he talked about voting rights, to keep their types of folks voting based off of that hatred. It's just, I guess it's a standard portion of the party. And by the way, he mentioned something about the Civil War and whether or not white folks who fought for the North and helped liberate those black folks, if they're supposed to get reparations as well. If you only knew that the idea of reparations is based on how black folks built this country with free labor, forced free labor, and the genocidal approach to it that was systemic within our government and those founding fathers, then maybe you'd realize it has nothing to do with it. Oh, and also that those northern states also benefited from slavery as well. People don't like to point that out. Just saying. Maybe he didn't get enough CRT in his education growing up.